And welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. You're listening to the Adam Messer Show here on WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And I have a wonderful show today planned. Have Julie Olsen. Dr. Julie Olsen is in the house with me. She's a friend of mine. I've known her. We were just talking about this. I've known you since probably 2007.
Probably, yes.
I think it was 2007. I was working at Phoenix and you were teaching there.
That's right.
And
That's right.
By circumstance and chance, or whatever you want to call it, this last week we reconnected because of Marianne Ganem Papel.
Right.
I always want to say Popple, but it's Papel.
It's Papel. I knew the Papel brothers growing up.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool because she was just on the show not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been friends with Marianne probably for like 4 or 5 years now.
Right.
And it was so crazy because she did not know that you and I knew each other, and vice versa. She had no idea that you knew me and I knew you and whatever. And then you sent me a message on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, how you doing? I'm writing a book, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, this is so cool." So we ended up talking on Friday.
Right.
And I'm so glad that we reconnected because it has been a long time. I haven't seen you in person probably since 2015, 2016, something like that.
At least.
Yeah,
yes.
It's been a while.
Yes, it's been a long time. It's
Yeah.
good to see you again,
You
Adam.
too. And you actually completed your doctorate
Yes, I have.
last year, right?
I was actually finished and defended my dissertation while all the other students were leaving campus.
Wow.
And I drove down for the defense, and when I got down there, I heard that they were closing the campus because of COVID. I called the dean and I said, and he was in a meeting, so I asked his assistant, I just wanted to confirm we're still good for tomorrow. She said, sure.
Wow.
And then about 7 o'clock that night, he called and he said, Julie, is there a problem? I said, nope, I'm here. And he said, so are you still wanting to go tomorrow? And I said, absolutely. And he said, well, I got that phone call. And I said, well, everybody told me you were all closing the campus. And I assured them that you were ready to get rid of me and you were going to let me defend my dissertation.
That's funny.
And he laughed and he said, it's not that we want to get rid of you. And I said, oh, come on. I'm finishing tomorrow.
Yeah, last year was such a crazy year because the kids went to spring break right before St. Patrick's Day.
March 13th. That was the day I defended.
Yeah, the kids went to spring break. They said, they recommended that everything, just kind of shut down, and they said, oh, we're gonna close it for like 2 weeks.
Right.
And then, of course, it just all unfurled, and the pandemic happened, and we're still dealing with the repercussions of it. But that's so cool that you completed your doctorate, and obviously you weren't able to walk for that.
Right.
But we were talking Friday, and you said you had like a special little celebration, which is kind of how we got reconnected.
Right.
So can you share that with everybody?
Well, yeah, and it's funny because my dad is in Valdosta, and I got my doctorate in public administration from Valdosta State University, one of the 5 in the nation where you can get a doctorate in public administration without living there. So we had people from California.
Wow.
We actually had someone in class from the CDC and people who ran cities. So it was real interesting. But I wanted to finish. I'm kind of driven anyway, and I wanted to finish.
Well, I know that. The folks at home, they're going to learn that today.
Yes.
Yeah. We got some firecracker stories to talk about.
I'm fairly driven, and when I put my mind to something, I'm pretty committed to it. And I was one of the first. I wasn't the first in my class to finish my dissertation, but I was in the top 3 to finish.
Nice.
And I wanted to do it because at the time my dad was 89, and I said, I didn't. He wasn't able to see any of my graduations, and I really didn't walk when I graduated from the University of Georgia.
Right.
I didn't walk when I graduated from Georgia Southern, and I thought with my master's in business, and I said, I want to walk with my doctorate, and I want my dad there. So I said, I want to finish, because he's 89. What I didn't know is my dad is 89. Now he's 90 and still flying airplanes.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's
That's
a
pretty
very
cool.
active. But because I rushed to get it done and finished, I didn't walk. And the irony is, had I taken a little more time,
You
I could have walked,
this year. Yeah.
and he could have been there. But
Did they offer that option for y'all?
they offered it in December.
Okay.
And in December, it would have been in the middle of the week, and it was still the vaccines weren't out, and I knew my dad at that point.
Right.
He was 89. I thought, I don't want him out around a lot of
Jeopardizing his
people.
health, yeah.
And I know he would have come.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I'm just not going to walk. So I took pictures of me in my little robe. And this past week, my daughter finished her master's through COVID. And so I said, let's just celebrate. But I think it was really interesting because when COVID, you can make a choice. You can sit at home and wonder and ponder and worry, or you can make the best of the situation. And so I finished my doctorate and started on the book, and my daughter started her master's and completed it. So
And you had a little graduation celebration party,
yes,
and that was kind of how we got reconnected in a little way because they were like, hey, well, it was a series of events that led up
series,
to it.
yes.
Yeah. So you graduated and you're like, you know what? I want to have a party so you could celebrate. So talk about that.
Well, it was a small party. We just wanted a few people and actually decided it was going to be a girls-only deal.
Oh, there you go.
We weren't letting any
ladies only, there
men,
you go.
ladies only. And it was, my daughter is an educator here in town in second grade. So she invited some of her friends and I invited some of my friends, and we had a small get-together. But Bunny Ware ended up showing up to get lunch that day from the place that had closed for our party.
Oh, that's crazy.
And she's like, my daughter said, Mom, do you know this lady coming in? And I said, yes. And jokingly, I went and I said, we're closed.
But he's like, what?
She said, trust me, she's going to let me in and I'm hungry.
Oh, wow.
So I told her, come on in. And so we were talking, and she told me that I should talk to Mary Ann. And then Mary Ann said, you ought to talk to Adam. And I'm like, no way. I know Adam.
Yeah, such a small circle, right?
Right.
And then it was so weird because not weird like in a weird way, but weird in like just a strange way. You sent a message to me on LinkedIn, and because we haven't seen each other since like 2013, something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, when we were working together, we worked together, but not worked together.
Right.
You were
right.
you were a professor and you were teaching classes, and I was a financial aid person there, and I helped students a lot. And it was weird because when you were teaching, I was going through my master's online, and I finished my MBA online.
Right.
And then I went for my master's of information systems online.
I remember that.
But
yes.
I remember when I first started working there, I worked at the front desk. I was still doing my undergrad, and I remember. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember that one night that Bob. Oh gosh, what was his last name? Bob Davis. Bob Davis. You remember Bob Davis?
We'll just call him Bob.
Bob. Yeah.
We won't call out names.
Oh no. It's a good story.
Okay. All right.
I'm not going to knock him.
Okay. Good.
But he was there, and you were there, and like I don't know, it was just one of those things where. You taught the MBA students that were going there.
Right.
He taught the MBA students. I just remember always talking to you two about, like, because I was taking my business administration stuff, and I'd always like talk to both of y'all about, just business process, because you did a lot with human resources and
right.
Relationship management and that kind of stuff. And, that was one of the things I always enjoyed, even though I'd never had you as an instructor or a teacher. I just always enjoyed that, and we became friends, and, and then this whole big circle of, like we were talking, it was 2007. I mean, that was 14 years ago.
Oh, please. I'm not that old.
No, I'm just saying that was, I can't believe it was 14 years ago, and,
well, I'll tell you, Adam, I started working when I was in high school at the YMCA.
Oh, okay.
And I was working day camp, and most people think day camp is childcare. But the YMCA took a different approach and said, no, we're not taking care of children. We're developing spirit, mind, and body. We're developing people.
Yeah.
And I really realized through that experience, I had a strong passion for helping people develop.
Yeah.
And that has carried me out through every career and every transition in my life. The common theme is developing people. And so standing there talking to you at the front desk, it was just normal to say, how can I help you? What do you need?
Yeah.
You know, it's just something I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because I know I helped thousands of students graduate.
Right.
And you taught thousands of students while we were there, you know, and I think it's interesting because the average student age that were going to Phoenix, and you know, people talk about it's accredited through the North Central Association of Colleges and Schools, same accrediting body that accredits SACs.
Right.
You know, there's 6 different regions or whatever, but we'd have students that were from all ages, but the average age was 35. And they had been working.
Right.
They had children, families, you know. But we had students that were all the way up in their 70s, you know, and 80s.
Right.
And, you know, we had people that were from all walks of life, you know, from all backgrounds. We had people that, I mean, no name dropping, but we had a guy that was a retired NFL player.
Right.
You know,
I remember.
Owner. Yeah. And, you know,
he was in one of my classes.
Yeah, yeah.
He was a big guy.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not a big lady.
I know. I'm 6 foot tall, and he made me look small. You know?
I'm 5 foot in heels.
There you go. But that's one of the things I liked about the school was that it had, you know, such a broad background with people, and I made friends with people that I probably would have never met if it weren't for, you know, and I wouldn't have known you if it hadn't been for Phoenix.
Right.
You know, I would have never had you as an instructor because I wasn't taking your classes there.
Right.
So, you know, I think it's a really neat way that how things kind of just progress, and they, you know, just kind of, I mean, like it was a real pleasure for me the other day to reconnect with you and be able to talk with you. I think we talked for like an hour that day, just catching up, and we weren't really talking about much of anything, you know,
just catching up.
Yeah. So I think that's so cool because, and then it just turned out, and I'm just kind of sharing this with the folks at home, but it just turned out that my guest canceled for this week, and I was like, hey, Julie, what do you think about being on the radio with me? And you're like, okay, yeah. So here you are.
Well, and I will tell you something to remember with that is when you're meeting people, you never know where they are in their journey, and you never know where they'll end up.
Yeah.
And one of my students who asked me when he was there, I'd like to change careers. What are some, you know, how do I do that? And we talked a little bit about that. But fast forward 10 years later, I was in an organization that was being bought out, and he knew all the regional players in that organization because he had made a successful transition.
Nice.
One of my students at the University of Phoenix made us very successful, and he said, who do you want to meet? So you never know what everybody personally has value no matter where they are in their journey. And it's really about being nice and connecting people to help them move forward. And, you know, my company is Workplace Advancement Strategies, and really I try to focus on helping people advance personally, their teams, and their organizations.
Is that the business you were talking about the other day?
This is the consulting company that I'm the president, and it's really great working with people who want to get better. Whether it's individually, I work with global companies, I work with individuals.
Nice.
It's a variety. So,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I got to do the station ID real quick.
Yep.
You're listening to The Adam Messer Show, and this is WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I usually Sebastian is in the studio with me, my son, and he plays live music, but he was not able to come in today, so I'm going to play a recording of his. All right, so that's just a recording because a lot of the folks listen. That's one of the things they enjoy about the show too. So I always try to play something when he's not here, but he also plays acoustic. And talking about development or whatever, he was 13 when he wanted to play the guitar. And you have children, so
right, right.
And I was like, okay, we'll go check it out or whatever. And I kept talking about it, and this was like over a short period of time. It wasn't like he was talking about it for like a year or two, and I was like, oh yeah, whatever. But we went and we bought a guitar, an electric guitar, and an amp for him from a local pawn shop. And I was like, just try it out and whatever. And he took one lesson. No, I think 2 lessons. He took 2 lessons, and it was one of those things that he stuck with. And he's going to be 19 this year, so it's going on 6 years that he's been playing guitar and started his own band and all that stuff. And I think that's one of the interesting things about development when someone has that stick-to-itiveness.
Right.
We were talking the other day about Sisu, and I want to give a shout out to Darlene and Terry Dremel because they're the ones that were telling me about Sisu. That tenacity. That's something I feel like is important when talking about going through school and education and furthering your education and things like that. Not just, like at the academic level, but as, self-development and personal relationships and, just growing as a person. You figure out what you want to do, and then you go do it. And then you have to stick to it when things are not going well.
That's right.
And Darlene and Terry actually just sent a thing saying, hey, they're listening now. So shout out to
great.
y'all. Yeah. But that was something that I think you taught a lot of different business courses.
Right.
And I think you taught the capstone class as well, right?
I did, which was strategy,
right?
Business strategy.
Yeah, continuity, and what was the other one? It's business continuity, and then I can't remember what, but basically it was reinstatement of services after disruption. Well, I can't remember the name of it though.
Actually, we started with how do you even start a business?
Oh, yeah.
The business concept all the way through to they had to present a business plan. So it was pretty comprehensive.
I remember when I did my MBA, I that's one of the things, too, with the classes being shortened to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But you still did the coursework of a regular semester.
Yes, and we graded papers like it was a regular semester. Because I have taught for Georgia Southern as well, and I taught in the regular semester, and it's still a lot of work.
Yeah.
But when you condense
have it spread out a little bit.
Yeah, when you condense it to 6 weeks, it was a very focused 6 weeks.
Yeah. So with that, and this is kind of where I'm coming back around. You were talking to me the other day, and if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about your book?
Sure.
Because I thought it was a really interesting concept, and it's just one of those things. It's like, I think your working title. Do you want to share it yet or no?
Sure.
I don't want to do any spoilers. I don't want to reveal anything that you don't feel comfortable talking about. But I think it's a great title and a great concept because it applies to people in their life, not just with business, not just with work, but also just in life in general.
Right, and. Okay, we won't share any spoilers. How about teasers? We'll call it teasers.
Yeah.
My book is not published yet. It should be in the fall. It's going to be called, that would have been nice to know, Advice from People Who've Made Successful Career Transitions.
And you're focusing on the career transitions, like
yes.
the career changes, which I'm in the middle of changing a career too.
Well, and what it is, and here's how I ended up coming up with that. I have wanted to write a book for over 20 years. And writing a book is not something you just do overnight. I mean, you'll see ads, hey, let me help you write your book in a week. It doesn't happen. Not if you're putting your heart and soul into it. And I really had to come up with some topic that I felt like would be helpful for others because that's what I wanted to do. The focus was, how can I help? And I've been consulting for many years.
Yeah.
And what happens is people get all excited about a new role and they focus on the interviewing process and getting the job, and then they go, okay, I've got it. And they step in and they aren't as prepared as they could be. And what happens often is 6 or 8 months down the road, they're in trouble. Because
when the honeymoon's over.
The honeymoon's over.
Yeah, and they're expected to perform.
And they thought what made them successful in their past role was going to make them successful in their new role.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't always happen that way.
Right, right.
So I went out and I interviewed 28 people in different
Fields,
journeys,
yeah.
different fields, different journeys, different transitions, starting with college to career. What mindset changes do you need from moving from college days to career? And what was interesting to me, one spoiler, I will go one spoiler, but it was funny because I did come out of an HR background, and all 3 of the people that I interviewed in that first chapter said they were surprised how little they knew. One of them was
from college to real life.
To real life. One of them had been in her master's program, engineering, thought she had it, told me she went and took all her books and she bookmarked them and she labeled them and she knew exactly what she was doing. And she got to the job and she said, I think I knew about 10% of what I needed to know. And it was real scary. So it's about, through that, understanding when you start a new job, there's going to be a lot of learning. And you bring value to the table, but people also struggle with, how do I bring value, prove my worth without looking like a know-it-all?
Right, right.
And that's a challenge for some people. But
yeah, and not only is it a challenge, I feel like that people are intimidated when, like for example, you're a very well educated person, but you also have a lot of experience. So, if you say, for instance, if you were going to a firm as an HR, not a manager, but as an HR employee,
right,
like at a supervisor level, but not, at the management level with them, there might be people there who have less experience, less education, and this is a real world thing. People are intimidated by other people who are intellectuals, who have experience, who have, charisma, all kinds of different things. And so how do you navigate in that realm? And there's I think there's a lot of transition with that too, because that's a challenge that is not something you did,
right.
But that you have to deal with.
And I'll tell you, when I approach any new situation, here's the thing. Yes, I have 2 HR certifications. I have an undergraduate in education. I have a master's in business. I have a doctorate in public administration, and I don't know much. Okay.
I know the feeling.
I mean, I
feel like the more I learn, the more that I need to learn.
Right. And
the more I learn, the less I know type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you called me and said, hey, tell me about this employee relations issue, I'd go to my buddy who's frontline, does it day in and day out, because I don't know as much about that as I do developing leaders.
Yeah.
Or
I love
people.
the I don't know, but let me find out.
Right.
That is like one of my favorite standbys that I will always go to. If I don't know something, I'm not going to try to just give you a cookie cutter answer just to give you something.
And I think that's where, when somebody makes a career transition, that's a challenge for some people, because they don't want to admit what they don't know to their new employer, where there's limited trust.
Or when they make a mistake, owning that mistake.
Yeah. I talked to somebody just this past week. How can I tell this story without getting off a lot? Okay.
We'll just call them, Purple. I was talking to Purple the other day.
I was talking to Purple the other day. Yeah. And what they said was their first 3 hours on the job, and it was a customer-facing position. They made a mistake for the customer.
And when you say customer-facing position, you mean they're interacting with the public.
They were serving the public.
Yeah.
And this particular customer asked for something. And this employee took it quite literally and gave them exactly what they asked for, which wasn't what they wanted. And
they didn't have the nuance of figuring out like what the customer was asking for.
Right. And it was a simplistic request. If I told you the request, it would be too obvious, but it was a simplistic request. However,
They overthought it.
they were actually correct in what they did.
Technically correct.
Technically
right?
correct.
Yeah.
The employee was technically
I want to
correct.
ask you about technically correct too, because that's one of my pet peeves with people.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we can go there.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit.
But I will say from a leadership perspective, so this employee was just telling me that this happened 15, 16 years ago. And they were standing there looking at and noticed that the customer went up to the manager and had a very angry look in his face, was loud, and then pointed to him. And he thought, I've been here 3 hours. My day's over. My job is done. And he said the way the manager handled it, he came over and asked what happened. And he told him what happened, and he looked at him and he said, got it. And he knew technically he was right. And he said, let me share. And the way that manager handled it, because at this point, the manager, the shift manager, and the owner of the company now were involved. We're all standing there because of the complaint.
Wow.
And he said, but the way they handled it, in that they took a second to hear why I did what I did. It made sense, and they shared what perhaps could have been done differently. And then even the customer laughed and said, you're right, you did exactly what I asked. But it was one of those things that could have made or broken this employee. But because the leaders had the foresight to ask, what from your perspective happened? And he said, right then I made a decision. This was a smart career move, and
That's
I'm going to
good.
stay.
Yeah, that's good when they put people first.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really good because there are a lot of organizations that don't do that. But I feel like that's a great way to handle things and try to look at it from like, okay, well, how can we resolve this where, you know, you're happy, we're happy, and it's a win-win instead of, you know, like I'm losing, you're winning, or
Right.
I'm winning, you're losing, you know, kind of thing.
And looking at it from a learning perspective, I mean, this person said, now I know what to do next time, you know, and when you look at it over time, this was a frontline minimum wage person at the time who has now stayed with the company and is in leadership. However, if you look at if that had been a leadership person and if you lost them, look at the cost.
For the development and hiring and all that other stuff, training and all that. Yeah.
And it comes down to how do you handle those, and are they learning experiences? And who's to say the next person isn't going to make another dumb mistake? You know.
Oh well, you know? If one thing that I've learned over the years is if someone else makes the mistake, I can make the mistake too. You know, when someone's willfully ignorant is different. When they're doing it on purpose, like when I'm talking about being technically right.
Right.
So I'll give an example that happened to me yesterday, and then we got to do a station break.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about a fast food place. I'm not going to name names because we're not going to get sued today. But I was at a fast food place. It was 20 minutes for the drive-through line, and I'm diabetic, so I am a controlled diabetic, but I have to watch my blood sugar. And when I feel like my blood sugar is dropping, I try to get something to eat. So the closest place was this fast food place, and so I wanted to get a cheeseburger, and I waited in line. And then I got to the checkout lane, and they rang me up. I watched this person in front of me. Then this place is really slow. I don't know why they were so slow. It shouldn't have been really slow. It wasn't even lunchtime, really. It was like 1:30. It wasn't like the rush hour.
Rush hour.
Right. So I was in line. I waited. I watched the person in front of me, get a bag handed to them, and the person's like, "Oh," handed it right back. It was my burger.
Oh.
I get up to the lane. The person left. I get up to the lane. I said, they handed me the bag. It looked just like the other bag. And I said, is that the burger that you accidentally handed to the guy in front of me? And they were like, yeah. I said, no, don't give me this back because you gave it to him. You know, I don't want it because you gave it to him. Now it was being weird, but I didn't like the fact that he would do that, and
Right.
it was an issue that I had with him doing that he would do that, and I asked them to remake it. So they said, "Oh, we need you to pull up front." So I pulled up front. 5 minutes goes by. They bring me out another sandwich, and it's made wrong. And I was like, you lied about giving the person the burger in front of me. You should have thrown it away. Like, if it touches somebody else's hands, you're not supposed to do that. It's a health code violation. You can't give somebody else their food and then give it to somebody else. But then you made me wait 5 minutes, and you gave me the wrong product. And I was upset about that because I was like, this person's just doing this, and they're not taking their job seriously.
They're not thinking about it, right? They're not invested.
They don't care. They're just there to, punch in, get, whatever paycheck they're getting. Probably get minimum wage too, or whatever they're paying right now for this fast food place. But it was one of those things that, I don't like when people do things like that because it's an issue of integrity to me.
Right.
If you know that you're not supposed to give somebody else the food back, then don't do it. And that's one of the things I know that you can't do. Mm-hmm. But this person just did it anyway, and they were like they didn't even care. When I said, "Hey, is that the same bag that you gave?" Yeah. I was like, "Well, can you make me a new one then, please?" And then they made me wait. And it was one of those things where, like that, those kind of interactions, I'm not going to call and complain and be like, the guy who's being all, angry and all that. I'm just going to not come back.
Right.
And that happens. I think more people will just cut ties and stop using that service or that business because of a negative interaction than they will complain. There are a lot of people that will, be like really loud and complain and whatever, and we see those on social media all the time now. But there are a lot of folks that will just quietly never come back.
Right.
And then, it's like, well, how do you train for that?
And there are statistics to validate that somebody will be quietly leave and then they'll tell others. And
right, like
you never know.
All the people that are listening now.
Yeah.
If I had said the name of the place,
right.
that would have been bad. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to. I don't want to get sued. Not because I really care about the place, but
yeah.
All right, so we need to do a station break. Let's see here. They have. All right, it's going to come on, y'all. You listen to the Adam Messer Show, and I'm talking with my special guest today, Dr. Julie Olsen, and you have your doctorate in public administration?
Yes, I do.
And your background is in people development, human
Yes.
resources, business leadership, that kind of thing. That's pretty cool. So here we go, y'all.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
This is a message from the Georgia State Department of Public Health. There is a State of Georgia hotline people can call with questions or if they think they may have been exposed to the COVID-19 virus. It is 1-844-442-2681. If you believe you're experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 or have been exposed to the novel coronavirus, please contact your primary care doctor, an urgent care clinic, or your local federally qualified healthcare center. Please do not show up at an emergency room or healthcare facility unannounced. More information can be found at dph.georgia.gov. This portion of WRUU Savannah Soundings programming is provided by listeners and by Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day Natural Foods has been serving Savannah's healthy food and supplement needs since 1978. It is located at the corner of Bull Street and Park Avenue. They have available online ordering and curbside delivery, And now a walk-up window for smoothies, juices, and sandwiches from the deli. They are open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 12 to 5:30 p.m. on Sunday. More information can be found at brighterdayfoods.com.
WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
All right. So we're back. And, you know, I can tell you, for me, this is a lot of fun because I love leadership development. I love self-development, personal growth, and that kind of thing. And I love talking about growth development, personal growth development, you know, helping other people. And I feel the same way. I love to help other people. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you, we're talking about, like, and earlier we were talking about technically correct.
Right.
The situation, you told me off air, and I don't want to repeat it, but the situation, the way it worked out, it was because of the customer's request. The person helping the customer made the order exactly like they wanted, and it was just a miscommunication, right?
Right.
They weren't doing it, you know, just to be technically correct. But there are folks out there who, and when I'm talking about, like, they do stuff to be technically correct, I'm talking about bureaucracy. And I'm talking about, like, where people want to, they call it like a rules lawyer, or, I mean, like, you worked in HR for a long time. Right. So you know that people play games when it comes to, like, oh, well, this is what the policy says, or, you know, whatever. Those are the kind of folks that can be a cancer to an organization. They can really be detrimental to, well, let's just say if you're, you know, in the situation you're talking about, let's just say that person was like the person I had yesterday.
Right.
You know, and they were just nasty, nice. They weren't, like, argumentative or combative, but they were nasty, nice, and then they made the order wrong on purpose.
Right.
You know, and let's just say the customer left and didn't talk to the managers there. Then what? And like you were saying before, you know, that kind of spreads, you know, like that negative interaction spreads because, you know, like, can you believe that they did this, or, you know, whatever. That's just human nature.
But I think from a leader's perspective, our job isn't just to tell people what to do.
Right.
It's to help them understand the why. And Simon Sinek has a book called, you know, Start with the Why. But I remember as far back as the early 90s, there was a old tape at that point, a VCR tape, but I still remember it very vividly. It was a training, and I don't remember the person's name, or I would give them credit, but I don't remember their name. But they were talking about an incident where it's important that you help people understand the bigger picture so that they understand how to align their behaviors with it. And he was talking about when he was young and he was at a gas station. His job, you know, long time ago, gas stations used to have attendants that washed your windows.
Oh, yeah.
And,
my uncle did that when he was a kid.
Right. Well, that's what
They'd pump the gas for you. They'd wash your windows. They'd, you know, fill up your antifreeze or whatever you needed. And it was like a full service.
Full service.
Yeah.
That's
you got
right.
like, you know, I mean, you literally got full service for gassing up.
Right.
Yeah,
and
filling up.
That was this guy's job. And he said he would wash the windows. He would do all of the service part. And the owner kept getting complaints that he wasn't washing the windows. And he said, I am washing the windows. I wash every window that comes in here. And the owner said, well, let me explain. Our job is not to wash windows. Our job is to provide clear vision. And you think about it, he said, I thought about that, and did it make me think differently? Yes, it did. He said, I started thinking, asking simple questions like, can you see? You know, is it clear for you? But it was because he understood it wasn't a task. It was a mission. You know, this is what we do. We provide clear vision as opposed to we wash windows.
Yeah, like a lot of companies today, they will say, you know, we're not selling a sandwich, we're providing an experience.
Right.
You know, they're trying to, you know, and it's a different way of looking at it because if you know, anybody can sell sandwiches or anybody can wash windows or whatever. But, you know, even if you and I were doing the same job, like washing windows, and I did a better job than you, if you had better customer service or if you had better interactions with your customers, people are going to feel like you do a better job.
Right.
And I think that's so important because you have that personal relationship with people.
Well, and it's in one of my roles throughout, I have had my own personal career transitions, but in one of the roles, I was responsible for employee development at a very large organization. And we could get some frontline employees to we had a particular program where they would commit.
And I'm not gonna name any names, but that organization you worked for, they had a really bad reputation for front-facing people for a long while. And I remember that was one of the things that they had to work on because it had such a bad reputation for just not caring about people who came in. And I imagine that was difficult to deal with. And you trying to, not rechange, but you trying to redevelop that culture into where they actually cared, even if they didn't, they had to put on the act or whatever and do their job to that perspective.
Well, and the program I was just referring to was part of that whole bigger initiative where leadership said, we do need to change the culture here, because if we don't focus on our people, they're not going to focus on our customers. Yeah. And so we ended up spending a lot of time on our people and developing our people and making them feel valued.
And then that place became the number one in the area.
It also became one of the top 100 Fortune 100 companies to work for.
Yeah,
I think that's years
amazing,
in a row.
Because you could look at the way that statistics were or whatever from when you came in to how it changed.
Right.
And that's action. That's proof in the pudding or whatever you want to call it.
Well, and what I remember one of the chief operating officers asking me, how do you get these frontline people to be so committed? Mm-hmm. And he was relatively new, and I looked at him and I said, I don't do it. It's really about helping them see the mission. Mm-hmm. What's the value? What value do we want to provide this community? Mm-hmm. And then they jump on board.
And see, I think that's a great way to combat that technically right and bureaucracy, because there are a lot of people that do that. There are a lot of folks that they're unhappy or they're unsatisfied with whatever that they're going through, and they feel like that they deserve something that they haven't even earned or worked for, and it can be toxic. It could be really negative in that culture or that business or whatever, and if you're the owner of a small company, it's even worse because you have less people who are working for you.
Right.
But when you're a bigger company, if you get, let's say you have a department with 10 people in it and you have one person who's, really negative and that they influence all these other people around them, all of a sudden you might have 4 or 5 or 6 people who are just, going right along with that.
Right.
And that, think about how many people that they're affecting.
Well, and if you think about it, I can think of a situation where it was somebody who was very nice, but they focused on the letter of the law, I guess.
Yeah, the rules lawyering type thing, yeah.
And
or the policy procedure following.
Well, in one particular situation at one company I was with, I didn't understand the behind the scenes IT, information technology is not my thing, okay?
That's okay.
I understand it. I've had to get very comfortable with systems. I've actually even implemented an employee performance management system from behind the scenes, but it's not my love and passion.
Right.
So
it's a tool.
Yeah. And so when I would call IT, I would say, can you provide me X? Mm-hmm. And I would get exactly what I asked for because I didn't know what to ask for.
I had a friend of mine that used to do that to me. We're good friends now, but I would ask a question and they would answer that question.
Right.
Even though they knew that I was trying to find something else out.
Right.
And he told me, he's like, well, you didn't ask me the right question. I'm like, but I did if my question made you think about what I was asking you. And you knew what I was talking about, but you knew that I wasn't asking you the correct question. I was like, you're living the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law.
Right. Help me know what I need to say
if I
in
don't
your
know
language.
what to ask, right? If I don't know what to ask you, I don't know what to ask.
I asked you what I needed in my language.
Right, right.
Tell me what your language is.
Like, I need to burn a copy of this course for these people, and I need to get it out tomorrow. Well, you need a CD-ROM burner. Oh, thanks.
Oh.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Is that something we can provide here? You can make a request. That kind of thing. I know, it's just then that can be kind of very frustrating when you have to deal with that, and you have to
Right.
and that's what I was talking about, like the technically right or whatever, because that is something that I feel is a big challenge when you want to help people but they don't want to help themselves.
Well, and what it ends up doing, in this case, it ended up being, I know you ran this report, but it doesn't tell me X. Well, you didn't ask for X. I said, but I need that. Well, so I'll have to run another report. Okay. But if he had just said, why do you want this report? I could have said, here's the outcome I'm looking for. And he could have told me, we went through 4 iterations, He could have said, no, this is not the report you want. Here's what you need, just by asking a couple simple questions. And I think when we help people understand overall what the why or the outcome we're trying to accomplish is, they can help us get there. And it may not be in the path that we identified. I didn't know the best path. I was just shooting in the dark and making suggestions. But in this case, if there had been more questions and clarification, they would have saved them time, me time, and frustration on both parts.
Yeah, and I've dealt with that too. And one of the ways that on both sides, either like when I'm the service provider or when I'm the client, right? I always try to ask, like, say for instance, you come to me and say, "Hey, I want to do this." One of the things, and I asked this the other day, I said, "Well, what are you trying to do?"
Right.
Or what are you trying to get? Where are you trying to get to?
Right.
And I try to ask open-ended questions because, first of all, your time is valuable, my time is valuable, and I want to see if it's something I can do.
Right.
I'm going to let you know. If it's something I can't do, then I'm going to try to connect you with someone who I might be able to connect you with that can help you. But on the other side, you don't know what questions you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. You don't. But I always try to let people know, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is X, Y, Z, and this is where I need to be. I need to be over here at A. I don't need to be at Z right now.
Right.
But even still, you'll have people. So you have to go back and forth until you're on the same page, until you're talking the same language. You're saying, hey, IT guy, please, this is this is what I need you to run, and this is what I need. This is the outcome I need, or whatever. And I think that's something that it is so weird because I like to laugh about it because I call it tech head when people have a lot of technical knowledge but they don't have people skills.
Right.
They can talk all day long about the technical side of the process, but they don't understand the end product for the customer.
Right.
Or the person that, like if you're the customer, you're using that report for a purpose. You're not just requesting it just to request it because, I think it'd be nice to have this report. You have a purpose for it. You have a need for it. So when you're trying to provide that service or that product or whatever it is, you have to have that mentality of how can I serve this person? That's why I like servant leadership because, like, how can I serve this person? What can I do for them? How can I help them? Not everybody has that mentality though.
No, they don't.
And I mean, some people I found that they have it naturally where they're just, they're just helpers and they try to, volunteer. And a lot of times if you ask for 10 volunteers, you'll have 5 people that say they'll come and you'll have 1 person show.
Right.
And if you have 5 people that show up, you'll have 2 people that are doing all the work. 3 people that are like, oh, I'm here to volunteer. They're there, but they're not really helping with the end game of what you want or what you need to get, and that's something I feel like is that. How do I say this? That's something I feel like that sometimes people do that on purpose because they find it's entertaining to frustrate other people.
Well, I guess I take a different approach.
Oh, hold on. Let me finish.
Okay.
Yeah, there are people out there that like to frustrate other people and the customer service, stuff like that. And then sometimes they don't understand that they're doing it. Sometimes
Right.
they don't know that that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I guess on the other side, you have that obligation to kind of help them understand, like, hey, this is, like you said, you went 4 times back and forth with this person trying to get a report. So hopefully the next time you had to get it, they're like, oh yeah, let me help you with this, Julie, and it was a lot better.
It was a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I'm currently working with a client that has employees all over the world.
Yeah.
And I'm teaching a communication series.
Oh, nice.
And they were talking about, so how do you deal with this with different cultures? And actually, there's some real commonalities. And one of the things that I just put together was a little session on accountability. And
yeah.
I'll tell you from the statistics, someone did a survey and they found that 26% of workplace conflict was due to accountability or lack thereof.
The blame game.
The drama.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I said, it's really important that we get this right, but it's easy, even with accountability. It's like, Adam, you said we were going to start at 3, but I thought you meant to be there at 3. It comes to that. So it all boils down to the foundation of accountability
Expectations.
is clear expectations, and that people understand the clear expectations and that there's an agreement. Because I could say, hey, Adam, we're going to do this on Saturday at 2. I look forward to seeing you there. And you shake your head. But there's not really a clear agreement on what we're doing, when we're doing it, and that you're really going to be there.
The PAL theory, place, agenda, length for meetings. It's like, okay, this is where we're going to meet. This is what we're going to talk about. And this is how long we're going to spend on it. And I love that when you have, that when you set those clear expectations, because I look at it like even if say you misunderstood, I'm going to take responsibility for that because I don't want to cause a conflict with you about a misunderstanding, miscommunication, even when I feel like you are being obstinate, not you personally. But,
Okay, thanks, Adam.
yeah, not you personally, but just, in general, like dealing with a difficult person or whatever.
Yeah.
I will do that to the point where it's reasonable. When it's reasonable.
Right.
I will not do that when someone is being unreasonable. I just will not, because you have to have those boundaries and you have to have those expectations of professionalism with people.
Well, and one of the other things in this series of communication is assertiveness.
Yeah.
And some people think that they have to be nice in every situation and they don't ask for what they really want or need,
Right.
which then creates accountability issues again, and the two are kind of married. And so it's really about understanding how to ask for what you want in a way that somebody will still talk with you tomorrow.
Yeah,
and deliver.
You can't, you can't just hit the nuke button when something goes wrong.
Right.
That's one of the things I think too. Talking about that with with expectations or whatever, when you have a person, so for instance, when you're talking about the person earlier, they're 3 hours into a job and they're probably thinking, what did I get myself into? But then the folks that were in management handled the problem, and they resolved the issue and it wasn't a big deal. But if it had gone the other way,
Right.
like you said, they were thinking, well, this is probably I'm done. I'm out. I've been here 3 hours and that's it,
Well, early in my career, I worked for the YMCA.
Right.
And in my first role as a director, one of our board members called. And I said something to him that, he asked for something. And I said, I'm sorry, we can't do that. And did not try to resolve it. It was just, I'm in my early 20s. Kind of new. I was like that new college grad that only knew about 10% of the job, right? And of course, it had to be a board member. And they called the CEO. And I'm thinking, immediately upon hanging up, I went, that did not go well. I would not do that again. And I'm already beating myself up. I don't need you to call me and beat me up, right? Because I'm already very committed to the mission, already beating myself up. And sure enough, the CEO calls. And I'm like, okay, I'm in for it. He's going to just lay into me because I messed up. And he called and said, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I just started by saying, listen, if I had taken 20 seconds to think through my response, I would have behaved differently. I would have said something different. And he said, what would you have done? And I told him, and he said, well, that's the right thing to do. And I said, okay, will you call him and tell him I'm sorry? And he said, no, you have to do it.
That's the best thing he could have done.
Absolutely.
That is the best thing he could have done.
He said, you're going to resolve this.
Wow.
I'm not fixing it for him or for you.
Yeah.
You're going to need to work with him again.
It's kind of like with your kids.
Yeah.
You have to, sometimes you have to step in, but most of the time it's like, you guys got to figure this out.
Yep.
Speaking of that, we are going to wrap this hour up. I can't believe it's already been an hour.
It's been an hour. It's been great. I'm enjoying this, Adam.
I'm loving it. I could talk all day long about like self-development and leadership and the reason why, and I know it sounds kind of crazy, the reason why I like to tackle negative issues is because a lot of times people just overlook those and they don't like to talk about how to deal with negative issues. And my reason for doing that is because I feel like if you can deal with the bad situations and be professional, and you can understand that people are going to be negative, people are going to have bad intentions, people are going to do things, on purpose, not all the time, but if you can identify and recognize it, then you can deal with it. Because if you just think everything's so wonderful and everybody's got the best intentions, they don't. You have to have like a perspective of reality, saying, hey, this is something like dealing with a guy, telling the person no, and then they try to overstep your authority.
Right.
Try to get you in trouble. If you had taken it personally, that would have been a whole different situation than how you had to deal with it.
And Adam, I see what you're saying, and I understand that. I think there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
You can't focus totally on the negative either.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's got to be a balance.
Yeah,
And
I'm not trying to focus just on the negative.
Right,
I'm just
right.
trying to say, like, talking about some of the different things because I like to get into the nitty-gritty of stuff. And I like to get into more. Because your book, you're talking about, I wish I had known that.
Yeah.
Some of these things, like I know we got to wrap it up, but like that phone call, for example. You were in your 20s. You did what you thought was right because that was the way you were taught.
Right.
From what you learned from school or maybe another manager or something like that. Now, looking back, you would not have done that.
Right.
You would have done it completely different. But you can't just overlook the fact that it was a negative interaction.
Right.
You know
and
what
you
I
can
mean?
learn from them.
You can learn from it. So that's my my point on it. But yeah, I think you're right. You have to be positive. You have to figure out how you can turn it into, instead of it being like a combatant type thing, you have to be like, okay, well, we're in the situation together. How do we work this out? How do we get past this? Is this where we're going to be able to rectify things, or is it where we just should just part ways?
Right.
So anyway, we're going to be back, y'all, at 4:00. So thanks a lot for listening for this first hour, and then we'll be back with Dr. Julie Olsen at 4:00.